Welcome back. And again, thanks for being here and thank you for hosting the program. It's been a pleasure to meet everybody. And so, look, you want a card, let me know. I'm happy to follow up with everybody, see what's going on. 5 steps for clear communication. You know me. The whole point of this is, in a sense, the GC is getting a wide disparity of people to work together and getting them to agree to play nice and to work together toward a common goal. So what I'm going to cover is getting the homeowner in alignment, the documentation to support that, job site coordination, setting ground rules before the job starts, and then supporting that through progress meetings. All right, so I begin to see, and I'm a former design build contractor, so I was fortunate enough to begin to experience a lot of this and begin to see that, and we talked about this morning, you're not selling a project, you're selling an experience. And so how do we align this experience so that anyone involved has a positive outcome and they want to come back if they're a supplier, if they're a subcontractor, David, and say, this was a good experience. I can see you guys run a well-run project. I want to continue to work with you. For homeowners then to be your biggest advocate, boy, they know what they're doing. All right, so we can continue. Michael. I knew that. Michael.
It is rule 1.
It is right. Yeah, strike 1. I apologize. So let's start with the homeowner. Remember Gary Larson?
Oh, yeah.
Great stuff. And
A slight mistake.
a slight mistake.
Slight mistake.
And, I know nothing about Gary Larson, but he's taking a shot at our industry. And when you think of what's the general reputation of the remodeling industry, is it positive or negative?
Negative.
It's negative, and some of these stories are, talked about and extended, and it really isn't fair because they don't highlight all the stories about, Habitat for Humanity, about participation in your community. And many other remodelers I know are very active, but those stories you don't hear as much as some of these things. So I'm really sensitive as people look at the industry and some of the stereotypes. I bring this up because if we're starting to work with somebody, there can be a little bit of baggage when a project starts. And we didn't determine this. This has come from outside influences. Honestly, you already know that when you begin working with somebody, their home is frequently their largest investment. Is it not? So there's a financial element to this. And the financial element is, as you do remodeling or reconstruction, there's deconstruction. And so you're actually affecting in a very real way the value of their home as you go through the deconstruction before reconstruction. So there's a financial element here. The home, and this is a wonderfully engaging emotional undercurrent to any remodeling project, which is their home isn't just a reflection of who they are, it's an extension of who they are. In a very real way, how long have people thought about some of these projects before they've done them? Years. All right, lifetimes, past lives, bringing it forward. So the home, so as you meet somebody who's had, somebody meet you and they've got a manila folder with a 1/2 inch thick of pictures they pulled from magazines to help illustrate, because honestly, you make dreams happen. And I don't say that lightly.
20 years.
And they've been collecting these things, and they're basically saying, I have this image of what I want, space that I intend to spend the next 5, 10, 20 years in. Can you help me make this dream happen? So there's a very compelling emotional undercurrent to what you're doing, because this is people's personal space. And has anybody been in commercial construction? Does that same undercurrent exist?
Different world.
Different world.
Usually you're dealing with an employee.
Oh, interesting.
It's an employee of some larger organization.
And it's time and budget.
And reputation, and they're trying to make do a good job.
Yeah, yeah. But it doesn't have that flavor of, it's got to be just right. Fair?
Sure. It's not a reflection of them directly at all.
Okay. So, based on what they've heard in the media, and again, by the time you start working with them, they've started to move their way through this, but by and large, is there a public image problem of home remodeling and construction with the general public?
Oh, yeah.
All right? And so here's what we're dealing with. They want to make sure, and again, if you've been referred, if you're getting warm leads, you're moving through some of this. But by and large, homeowners are concerned. They don't want to hire a crook. They've all heard stories where a job started and then the next day somebody didn't come back. Their money was taken, the job was left unfinished. So they're concerned. So this is even before you get there. Money, this one is interesting because if you start working with somebody and you need to start putting together some estimates, how many times have you given somebody an estimate and they said, I'm so relieved, it's less than I thought it was going to be. I don't think it happens a lot. And part of it's a reflection. This is custom remodeling. It is one of a kind. Every one of your projects is customized, and the price reflects that customization. 3 is disappointment. For those of you that do design build, who is that again? All right, and this also affects you. Because when people sit with an architect or a designer and put together this series of plans, I really discovered firsthand that most people can't take a 2-dimensional set of drawings and really understand what that space is going to look like. And it's not until you put down the floor, you put the walls, you've closed it in, they step into the room for the first time and they say, oh no. I was looking for something a little bit more positive. Something along the lines of, oh, this is what it looks like. All right, now, because for the first time they get the sense of space. Now, the CAD drawings and some of the architectural plans, they help this. But it really is, until a person steps into the space, they really don't know what they have. So the disappointment is, as you're going through the planning and development of the project, they are thinking, and they even say, after spending all this time and all this money, what if I don't like it? What do I do then? And it's a concern, and it's this undercurrent, which is, what do I do then? Number 4, disruption. How many people stay in the home when you're doing the project?
Too many.
Yeah.
Too many. Will we disrupt every routine in that house? Yes, we will. We will. What's it?
Will it be dusty?
Yes. Will it be dusty? Will we know that you're in here? All right. So yes, we will disrupt every routine, and all of this leads to a sense of loss of control. When somebody's in their home, instead of coming home to be able to rest and rejuvenate for the next day, they can't rest anymore. They're home. If you're working in the winter, the house is cold. The summer, the house is hot. Materials are piled up. There's strangers in their house every day. And so they're learning to deal with this invasiveness. So it can be a time of anxiety. Are they spending more than they thought? Always. Emotionally, is there a lot of uncertainty going on? Because again, what if I don't like it? Is this going to be what I've thought about for the last 5 years, 10 years, 12 years? Will this be what I want it to be? Dependency is simply, they hope and trust that when you leave work today, that you're coming back tomorrow. And because you're in the middle of this project, putting their home back together, they are truly dependent on you doing what you said you're going to do. And all this leads to the last one. And who has dealt with spouses that it's a trouble? We were talking at lunch that it's one of the, it's top 5?
One of the top 5 reasons for divorce, home remodeling.
Yeah.
Statistically, they did
Statistically,
it?
look it up.
Oh,
And it's not just Google. I mean, I've read articles over the many years. It's in the top 5 reasons for
It's,
separation and divorce.
and you begin to see, and I know you'll understand this, when you're sitting with a couple, some of the dynamics of the marriage come out, all right, during that conversation, and you're kind of in the middle. So it's can be challenging situation. So basically, let's put ourselves, if we're helping manage the homeowner, try to understand their fear factor and put ourselves in their shoes. So I usually say, who's done a remodeling project on their own home? All right, and just a really simple context, if I can use you. When you decided to do it, did you jump right in or did you postpone this a little bit?
Multiple phases, stop, start.
All right, and did you excitedly look at your wife and say, how fast can we get this started? I can't wait to do this.
Oh, I think at times maybe, but sort of move forward and step back.
Okay. The reason I bring this up is when I speak with contractors, did you excitedly jump into your own project? The answer is hell no. Because we know how hard it is.
Screaming, yeah.
We know the disruption. We know how unkempt it's going to be. We know some subs will make it, some won't. We know the material may be there on time, it may not. There may be a material mistake, my fault, but these things happen. We understand. If we know how challenging it's going to be, imagine what it's like for somebody who hasn't done it before. All right? So part of what I'm talking about here is managing their expectations and really queuing them up right from the beginning to begin to understand what's going to happen, but then secondly, guiding them every step of the way. So I call this the homeowner roller coaster. And some of you have seen this before, and if you'd like a copy, give me your card, write roller coaster, and I'll email you a PDF. And I used to drop this into my presentation materials. And the point would be, we'd talk about their project, and you'd hand them a little folder of some information. And how people kind of flip through it, as the meeting's ending, and they would find this and they say, what's this? And I'd say, oh, I'm glad you found that. We've been talking about your project. Now let's spend a little bit of time talking about the process. All right? So I'm just going to take you through this. Yeah, Stacy.
There's one of these where it has the different people that are involved.
Yes.
And which is really cute, where the dog is very excited during the whole thing, and then he's really his emotion goes down after because he can't go in the house anymore.
Yes.
And the neighbors are really ecstatic because now their property values are higher.
Yes.
So it's the same thing, but it has those little.
Yeah, you could probably Google, remodeling roller coasters and come up with a handful of them.
Yeah.
But my point is, if I'm going to have a client see this, and you'll relate to this from the building side, when they finally decide to do the project, are they excited?
Oh, they're
How long have they been
ecstatic.
How long have they been thinking about it?
Well, it depends. Maybe a year, maybe 3
Years.
years. Yeah.
All right, it can be quite a while. They call you and say, Stacy, we met with 3 or 4 people and we like what you said, we want to move forward. We want to do this now, we're excited. Then you start the planning process, you start the development process. How long does it take to put together plans and specs?
It would easily be 6 months.
6 months. I mean, depending on the scope of work, it can be quite extensive. That was the first dip in the roller coaster. I'd have homeowners tell me, we had no idea how many choices there were. And remember, when you start doing a project, their wish list is here and their budget's here. And the job during the design process is to bring those two things together. So giving you a project you love for a price you can afford. Would you agree with that? Okay, and that's really what we're putting together to move them forward. So we get the working drawings, and with those working drawings, I can actually put together a number. Well, that's the first dip in the roller coaster. I come back with a real number, could even be plus or minus 10%, and how do they respond to that number? Oh, no, I didn't pay that much for the house. Right? Now, that depends on when they bought it. But the reality,
1974.
1974. So it's their first initiation to, boy, this is custom remodeling. This is not inexpensive. All the technicality, I mean, the specifications of a larger project, 10, 15 pages. We were talking earlier about how many details there are on a larger edition. How many choices does someone make? Thousands of choices, and guess what? Every one of those choices affect their budget. Every single one. So look, they've been working with you long enough, Stacy. Do most people find the money?
Yes.
They find it,
Yeah.
all right? Stacy, it's been hard. You've guided us through this. We're starting. We want to get started. Boy, that first day when the backhoe shows up, the dumpster's being dropped off, the excitement is really palatable. It's happening. This is taking place. All right? Now, as you start to tear out the back of the house, there might be a little bit of concern. But boy, when you get in there and the demolition starts, you punch the hole, put in the footers, the framing, close it in, put the roof on, and to close in, say, an addition off the back of the house, how long does that take traditionally?
10% of the time.
2 weeks.
2 weeks? 3 weeks? Fairly? So they walk into the room after these 3 weeks and say, this is terrific, you're going to be done in about another 3 weeks. This is, why didn't we do this earlier?
Yeah.
This is just so darn simple. But now the tradespeople come in. And you can't bring them in at the same time. And are they working for other people at the same time? Yes, they are. So you're working on their schedule. Are there potentially some unforeseen circumstances? Always. Did we just add a little bit to their bill? All right. Are there some potential changes in the scope of work once they walk into the room and look around? And remember the fireplace and the built-ins they took out, during the planning stage? What do they want back?
Fireplace and building.
We're only going to do this once. All right, I want it back in. So this to me is that long downhill run. Because now I had people say, we seem to have lost some of our momentum. So what is it that's slowing things down? So here's what happens, here's why it happens. Suddenly there are a couple of extra bills that maybe they didn't plan on. So my experience is right around drywall sanding that people seem to bottom out. And I've told them it's going to be dusty. Like it's just, there's going to be dust. Well, but you put up the dust protection. Yeah, it's still going to be dusty. Still going to be dusty. Well, you look after what we've been through. How bad can it be? And it's not until they get up the next morning and they go to the closet and they reach in for a dark suit. What's on the dark suit? What's on every dark suit? And as they walk down the hall to the kitchen, the kids are cackling in the kitchen because they're playing tic-tac-toe. What's that?
Dark suits are not in anymore.
Oh, well, it's good for my analogy. So the kids are playing because for the first time they can draw and etch on any surface in the house. Why didn't we do this sooner? So your homeowners are either feeling, thinking, or will say to some degree, you've done a great job, you're on schedule, when will you leave? All right? I want my house back. The romance is gone at this point. All right? But look, they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Drywall's in, you can start putting in the trim, floor finishes, you're putting in the kitchen cabinetry, plumbing, lighting fixtures, you're finishing the painting. They can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's coming to a close. You see where I put party here? I probably had 20 clients say to me, I want you to know we're going to have a party for you and all the subs. All right, when we finish this, they don't bring this up anymore. All right, so there's not going to be a party, and they didn't forget. All right, they just want their house back. Now, I got to say that I did have 3 parties, but none of them were worth, it took about a year. So until they'd been in that space for at least a year. Because, and when I put this here and say that last door stop, that last doorknob, it can take time for people to recover. 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks. To forget the invasiveness, to forget the unkempt home week after week, month after month. So what I want them to know is there may be some time that passes until they're finally sitting in that sunroom. Back of the house, sun setting, there's a nice breeze, they got a glass of wine. And only then, 3 months later, I'm glad I did this. All right, so there's a slight recovery period. So I just want to go through this. If I do this before the job starts, most homeowners smile and they chuckle periodically. Yes, thanks for telling me. Well, what I've done is I planted a seed. All right, I want you to know there are going to be some ups and downs. There are going to be some things that come up that we haven't anticipated, but I'll guide you every step of the way. Please contact a few of my past clients. You can talk to them about the experience. So what we want to do is begin guiding that experience, and then we can begin documenting it. So what I want to do is just give you some tips, because if we can reinforce what we've said with specific training methods. So what I want to do is create a paper trail. So this can be literally on paper or it can be virtual. But I want to give them some information so they can track what's happening. So I'm going to go through each one of these. The on-site job book is simply putting a notebook or a whiteboard and putting it on the work site and letting the homeowner know if you have a question or comment that comes up when we're not here, I want you to write it on the whiteboard, put it in the book. I promise to respond in 24 hours or less. So I just want you, if a concern, question, put it on the job book. But I'm going to reinforce this, and I'm going to set up weekly progress meetings. So this is for jobs 3 weeks or longer. We're going to come in and meet weekly. You tell me what works. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning. We're going to set up a specific time. The construction superintendent or lead carpenter will lead this meeting, and then the salesperson and architect can attend if required. But I want to do a weekly check-in. There's going to be a documented schedule. I'm going to show you a copy of this memo form that supports the weekly progress meeting, and all the information will go into the notebook. So let's give you some examples. All right, here's the whiteboard or job book. Leave comments. Let them know that the whiteboard is to report things that are going on. And here's the other one. Who has homeowners call them at nights or on weekends? Would you like to eliminate it?
Yes, please.
All right. So the whole point is, if I create protocols, and I'm going to talk about the weekly homeowner meeting shortly, is we're going to set up weekly homeowner meetings. So we're going to be seeing each other weekly, formally. And secondly, I'm going to put this whiteboard on site. So if there's a concern, you can let me know immediately, or we can wait till the weekly meeting. So I'm going to put these in place so that you know we're communicating regularly. And I do this for one reason. Because when I go home, I want to be with my family. And I'd only want you to call me if there's an emergency. And then you simply define an emergency.
Got to do that.
An emergency is fire, smoke, or water. If it's burning, smoking, or leaking, I want to know. Otherwise, it'll wait. Being unhappy with a tile color is not an emergency. We can talk about that tomorrow.
I would actually add for still water is when there's serious disruption to their shower,
Oh,
that's an emergency.
okay.
Because that really, the weekend for some people of no shower is
Tough.
might as well have been a flood.
Okay, good point. We found from an emergency perspective, HVAC and plumber are the only real emergency calls. Everything else will wait. But part of this is just in the conversation, Mike, that this is what we're going to do. If you have a problem with this, here's my emergency number. And only call if there's an emergency. If you do this before the project starts, you'll actually eliminate all those evenings and weekend calls because they respect it. And every now and then they'll test you. They'll call, say, Maria, I know I'm not supposed to call.
That's right.
They'll apologize, they'll ask a question, you'll answer their question and move on. All right, so you can kind of retrain them. Weekly progress meetings, and this was the most important thing that I think we did. We set up weekly where I'm coming in at a set time to sit down and talk with them. And I always did it at Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday morning. Do you know why I'm saying the morning?
Pressure.
Not only fresher.
Gives you time to respond to
Well, it was more than that. I went to a couple evening meetings. When I got there, they opened a bottle of wine. They wanted to talk about their job. I mean, they want to talk about it. So after a couple 2-hour evening meetings, that's over. All right? So now, if I do it in the morning, I never had one of these last over 40 minutes. They have places to go. We have places to go. There are things to do. So very efficient. So at the weekly homeowner meeting, we would talk about, and I'll give you a description, but here's the progress notes. Client, date, meeting type, who's present, topic, action item, who's responsible, and by when. And you can actually start this during the sales process, because now what we're creating is accountability. So by our next meeting, what's taking place, who's responsible, and by when. So I promise to get you the estimate I've told you about. I'll get you the 2 samples. I'll have you those by next week. And you're going to make your paint selections. All right, so I'm going to write this on the form. And, you know, have you had homeowners basically say something to the effect of, you're taking too long, this isn't working, and it's because their inability to make decisions?
Yeah, oh my God. I mean,
All right.
non-stop.
So all this is doing, if you give them a schedule, you are creating accountability. This goes both ways. And I want you to see down at the bottom of the form, because at the end of the meeting, and this is a duplicate, so you can write on this, tear it, and then give them their copy. So what I'm going to do is before the meeting ends, I'm going to slide my meeting notes across the table. Mike, here are the notes I made. Did I get this right? And they're going to look and say, that sounds correct. So I plan to get you that estimate and that, sample I promised you. And you're going to make a couple decisions in regards to the paint colors all through the first floor. Is that right? Okay. Just initial it down there on the bottom, Mike. So you're going to initial it. I'm going to initial it, give you a copy. When somebody signs something, you just hit another level of commitment. All right, they've taken responsibility for that. And without going too far down this line, what you've also done is if there's ever a legal issue, you have a written and signed paper trail that anyone can look at, which was what decisions were agreed upon, what did the homeowner agree to, and they have signed that. So you've got a documentation. So what I'm going to do is in that weekly homeowner meeting, start off with the past week in review, questions or concerns. Here's what's happening next week. Oh, by the way, I'm still waiting for those paint samples. All right, you just got to get that done. This is the last week. All right, I put it in the notes. The drywall tape draw. All right, part of our progress payments. We'll be finishing the drywall. So we do need that draw. Are you sure you don't have any questions or concerns? All right, everybody initials the weekly meeting notes and they get a copy. But before I end this meeting, remember the roller coaster I showed you? So I'm sliding the roller coaster across the table. We're wrapping up. Tell me where you're at. All right, now they've seen this thing before. And if they point down to the bottom and saying, remember we talked about the drywall tape draw being due? Boy, we're down here. But there'll be a little smile that creeps across their face when they say, but you told me.
So I've been using that roller coaster for years.
Yes.
And I had one client when we were in a meeting and he just looked really unhappy. And I asked him and he goes, and he holds it up and he goes, because we're about to go over the cliff.
Was there a little smile on his face?
Oh, totally. He was
Yes.
cracking up, but he said, we're going over the cliff right now. Aren't we?"
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, strap in.
And the reality is, if somebody says, I'm way down here, I can then say, is there anything I can do? In 90% of the cases, they'll say, well, no. You told me, but at least you asked. And just fundamentally checking in and saying, is there anything I can do? Just the fact that I ask makes a difference. And for the other 10%, if I can do something, I want to know. Boy, can we do something? Because then what do you think your client's responding when you're saying, oh, I'll take care of that. Let's get that shower working. All right? So that weekly homeowner meeting goes along with a schedule. And there's different scheduling software. Who provides their homeowners with a schedule now? All right, it's a great idea. What do you use?
Smartsheet,
Smartsheet,
Microsoft Project.
Microsoft Project, Project.
Yeah, I form my own.
Okay,
Depends
And-
on the size of the job. Project I use for bigger jobs.
Okay.
And then I just do a calendar. Because homeowners can read a calendar. You hand a project to a lot of homeowners and they just don't understand.
that's what I learned, is that we were using Microsoft Project. And finally, one brave homeowner said, I don't
We
understand.
use something called a 3-week rolling schedule.
Okay,
And it's just updated for 3 weeks for the homeowner.
this is similar in regards to, by putting it on a spreadsheet, we can describe week by week what's happening. And so it's very descriptive. And so you put this together in the beginning. Even in pre-construction, if they want to start by a certain date, if you know it's a 4-month project, they've contacted you 7 months in advance, there's a lot of things that have to take place in those 3 months. So you can describe weekly what decisions they have to make for us to move forward to start at the appropriate time. We did this with a woman who's pregnant in Alexandria, and we just missed it by 1 week. But she knew on a weekly basis the decisions she had to make because the project had to be done by the time the baby was born. Then you move into the actual when the job starts, and the first time it describes what's happening on a weekly basis in their job. And I had 1 or 2 homeowners say, we didn't understand how this worked. And they could begin to see how the project unfolds. So that's present, and then I'm taking this into the weekly homeowner meeting. Last week, next week. Now, does any project go according to plan?
No.
It changes, it can move, but if I'm in the homeowner meeting and I can show you that schedule, and I can say, you know, the HVAC contractor can't make it. He's gonna come in a week later. I'm gonna try to pull the plumber and to get him to come early. If I have you participate in the process, I think people only get upset when they get scared. So if I can say, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, and for the first time, I think the homeowner also begins to see the variance in all the moving parts, and I think there's some appreciation to everything that you're doing. And now you've made them a participant. Yeah.
I also think that a lot of homeowners look at a schedule and they think this is a promise. And I put it right in our specs that it's a communication tool. That's
There you
all
go.
it is.
Good.
That's all it is.
Good. And it is. It's just a communication tool. It amends, it changes. Now remember the fireplace and the built-ins they added back in, you know, once we got to the change order phase? Once they add in, imagine when they add a change order, that schedule just grew by 4 weeks. And they see the effect of the change order. All right, we've got to revisit the permit. I've got to do some reframing. We've got to bring back out the electrician to move some plugs. So the real effect, and the reason you're paying what you're paying is to put those back in, here's the cost. So they see the effect of that. So what I've done is we work with that schedule. We're using the homeowner notebook, and now what we're going to do is put together a notebook that the homeowner can use to see how their project's developing. First section is the project agreement, your contract and specs. And I'm going to put this together for them. So here's a notebook with 5 or 6 sections. I want to make sure this material stays organized. You know where to find it. Section 2, the weekly meeting notes. So every week, I'm going to 3-hole punch that, you know, mimeograph form, that duplicate. So it goes right into their weekly homeowner meeting. So now they've got this written diary. Change orders in section 3. So they know what those are. You both have copies. Warranty materials going into section 4. And then what I like is with the digital cameras now, on a weekly basis, you can take pictures. And then coming back on your weekly homeowner meetings, adding pictures. And so what you've done now is create a visual diary of their project. And what I like to say is imagine taking all this material and creating a nice leather-bound notebook with your logo on the front. Will they ever get rid of that notebook? You're supposed to say no here.
No.
Yeah. Well, here's what happens. So they have this, and I like to say it's like coffee table material. Here is both a written and visual diary of their job as it unfolded. They could see it, they can relate to it. It sits out if somebody sees it. What's that? That's the project notebook my contractor put together. If they sell the house, who do you think that notebook's going to? Should be going to the new owner. They might keep it, but should be going to the new owner. You might have a client out of that because of this visual presentation. So I think it's a wonderful marketing package also. And doing something like this, when, you know, combined with what we talked about this morning, you can be doing notes and some other things and putting it into the notebook. And so we talked about, you know, the homeowner notebook. If you're going on to this client for life, you have additional sections where then you're adding on an annual basis additional work that's being done. So it's a nice depository for a lot of the information.
Do you think it's worth the investment in ink cartridges to actually print out the photos?
It can also be virtual,
Yeah.
okay? You could create a virtual notebook, and I don't know, do you do a homeowner portal now or some kind of?
Yeah, not quite as organized, but yeah.
Again, this is just so that a homeowner knows they have access to this document.
Right.
Personally, now I'm old school, okay? Holding that thing in their hand,
Right.
is worth something.
Yeah, I'm thinking in particular of the pictures, because I basically always given them a flash drive with,
Okay.
hundreds of photos on it.
Right.
Or just allow them to load mine into their computer.
Okay.
But a client on a project I'm on right now brought out a portfolio
Yes.
of a project that was done 15, 20 years ago, and just old-fashioned pictures, and it was actually really nice.
It can be very impressive.
Um,
Because what better marketing? If they had a good time with you and the project went well,
Right,
every time they look at that notebook, they think of you.
right,
When they look at that flash drive, it's probably not the same.
exactly, or it gets
Okay.
lost.
Or it gets lost. All right?
We use a software builder trend, and so we do a daily log, and you can put a couple of photos each day,
Huh?
and also you can put more photos if you like to. It's quite useful. Also, for example, we take photos framing, so later on in later stages when they decide
Protects
to
you.
do something else, we can see where the framing is and things like that.
Mhm.
So, and it's all online; they can access
So
it.
this
as
is
well.
Yes.
Did you check out like CoConstruct or any of those other ones?
No,
Yeah,
what's it called?
CoConstruct.
Oh,
is
okay.
another one that I'm checking out currently, but
Oh, okay.
it sounds like a similar thing. Daily logs.
Yeah, schedule,
conversations,
you can do
yeah.
schedule change orders, communicate a lot.
And all access through your website.
Through builder trend.
Yeah.
Who does the trade day before a project starts? Right?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
It's kind of like the kickoff meeting. I call it a kickoff meeting, and everybody gets to meet all the tradesmen, owners at least, maybe not the people that are doing the work, but at least the owners of the trades, the subcontractor trades, and they get a physical meeting, and
Yes.
we explain everything what's going to happen at that time as well.
You ever heard of the term partnering? It's done in commercial work sites, large projects, and they bring all the people together, and somebody coordinates this meeting about, I want you to meet so-and-so, this is how we're working together, here are the different responsibility, here's the list of the subs. So it really is informing who's working, who are you working with? These aren't strangers. These are going to be the people, all of us will help make this project take place. So we're going to do something similar. We're going to start, I'm going to take my trade contractors, and twice a year, and this could be done, I did it individually, taking them out to breakfast or lunch and reviewing with them how we're working together. And you'll see how this complements what we talked about this morning of creating these preferred partnerships. So what I'm going to do is review with the selected trade partner. You've all got these groups of subs now, your electrician, your plumber, your roofer, HVAC contractor, painter, drywaller. You get the idea? So what we're going to do is discuss expectations and opportunities. We're growing. We need a trade partner to grow with us. At lunch, I want to review what's going to happen. Here are our expectations, reviewing how we bill, what happens on site when you show up. And I've actually got a little book called Trade Contractor Guidelines. If you're interested in that, just let me know. And the idea is to outline what you want each of them to do on the site. How they show up, trash removal, when their invoices come in, when they get paid, insurance requirements. You're reviewing all those things with them. There it is, dress, invoicing, on-site rules, warranty visits. If there's a warranty item, when do they come back and fix it? But guess what? It goes both ways. So I'm going to review all my expectations, but before we leave, I'm going to look at you, David, and say, here's what we need. What can we do better? Right? What do you need on our side to make the job site more effective, more efficient? So it goes both ways to the degree that you can. Now you're chuckling.
Well, because most of them are gonna say, so when I tell you I need 4 days, I really need 4 days.
Okay.
And the painter says, I need to be here by myself.
Yeah. We'll work on it. So what you're doing, again, you're setting some ground rules with your trade contractors and the people you're working with who are very clear about what your expectations are. And then simultaneously, you're aware of what you can do for them. All right, that starts to build a stronger partnership. Trade day coordination is before the job starts, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ahead of time, setting up a visit to the job site with key trade contractors. You set it up in an afternoon, the clients are going to be there, the owner of the company and architect, superintendent assigned to the job, and each of the tradespeople that will work on the project. And you're going to set this up in a staggered fashion. So I'm starting at 1 o'clock. We're going to sit down, general contractor, superintendent, review the scope of work till 1:20. At 1:20, it could be the framer shows up. At 1:40, the roofer shows up. At 2 o'clock, the plumber shows up. At 2:20, the electrician shows up. And you set up those key trades, because now what the homeowner is actually meeting these key tradespeople. And as you go through each, so here's the HVAC requirement, here's the roofing, that subcontractor is then describing the scope of work to the project superintendent and the homeowners. And so now they're not strangers. Here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do it. If questions come up, how do I reach you, Stacy? So basically what I'm trying to do is facilitate the meeting, so we are partnering as we move forward. And it works really well because, number one, the homeowners get to see who they're working with. Your subs understand the project better. You should get a better price, because once they move off the plans to really see the work site, they can fill in anything they're not aware of. Your clients are more comfortable with you and the subs. The project should run more smoothly. You make more money, and you get more referrals. The homeowners see your sense of organization. They get to see it firsthand. Interesting. As you bring these people together, and they get to see you working, moving forward, and how you coordinate the job. Here's a simple copy, and again, I can provide you copies of all this. A field file checklist. Is everybody here in sales, and who's in production in the field? All right. How often do you get a job site package that isn't complete? Always.
Always, yeah.
Okay? And that's because,
Oh, so are you talking from subs, from architects, from?
so sales has completed the sale, you got the plan, the contract has been signed, I'm giving you the job site package so that you can produce the job. Are there holes sometimes?
They're
in
always,
it?
sure. they're
Always holes.
Yeah.
So all I'm doing is bringing this up, which is one of the things we implemented is before the field file can be put together and the job starts, here's the list of things that sales and or the office or admin must complete. Because until these things are done, the job cannot be passed to production. So just setting a checklist of all these things must be done. As a salesperson, I might have a few loose ends. And I'm saying just get it started, because I'm starting to move on to the other job. You know, my next sale. So this just creates a little bit of accountability. Could it work?
Yeah.
Okay. So it identifies what I want to see in that field file, so that superintendent or lead carpenter has everything they need to produce the job. And they're not calling and saying, where is this? Did this decision get made? What's the order date on those materials? And so it just goes back to identifying, creating accountability. Again, checklist of items, hospital location and phone. When I was in DC, there were certain roads that trucks couldn't drive on, the BW Parkway. And so they restricted. So if it were trucks, we were telling people how do they access the job site. And this was prior to GPS, so everybody had map books. And you could tell them the location of the house on the map book and what to look at. Field file checklist, some general information. As you do sales, do you identify some of the client idiosyncrasies? Things they like, things they want to see? So let's identify that. This is just pet peeves. It's just information. What do I want to make sure the field staff understands before they take over? You know, he's a helicopter pilot, 7,000 moving parts on a helicopter. Be sure you answer every question, get to the bottom line, right? They want to see a concise, clear, quick answer. All right? Yes, Maria.
I just was on a very large job site where there was resin explosive paint materials being used right alongside sparking electrical contractor things, and nobody knew where the electrical shutoff was.
Wow.
So that's one of the things that I try to
Absolutely.
incorporate is where's the gas, where's the electrical, because if people don't know that and there's an emergency, it can be a
Well, and somebody's got to coordinate that.
But I just wondered if it was on your list.
And again, you put this on, which is what do people in the field need to know?
Yeah.
Okay? Pre-construction meeting. Who does a pre-construction meeting now? All right? To me, there's nothing more valuable. People are not burdened because the project hasn't started. They're relatively fresh. They're excited. So this meeting is going to come in, and this is the handoff is now taking place. And fundamentally, this is where sales has to understand. You come in, Mike, we put this together. I've got David here to run the project, and David will be your project superintendent. He's going to host a meeting. He's going to review what's going to happen on the project and really review kind of a number of expectations with you.
I think it's the equivalent of starting an engine if you don't do it without any oil in it.
There you go. If you're not doing this, is like leaving the oil out at the engine because it's going to freeze. Okay? So run by the superintendent, and this is either if sales participates, they don't say a word, the homeowners look at you and you just say, David, he's taking it from here. He now owns this. And if there's an owner present, the owner has to either excuse themselves because it's too easy for an owner salesman, for homeowners to look back at the owner salesman and say, to look to them for the answers. And that's where the owner has to say, this is David's project. I'm going to turn it over. David, take care of it. Great seeing you. All right, call me if there are any concerns. So the salesperson
Not on
has,
Saturday.
what's that?
Not on Saturday.
Or evenings, all right? So basically, really empowering the superintendent to do that job. They explain his or her understanding. Owner is there as a salesperson only. And again, empowers David, empowers that project manager to do their job. Pre-construction checklist, and again, it's probably too hard to read, so I'm just going to read some of these. But this thing has proved invaluable. Supervisor, emergency after hours phone number. What constitutes an emergency? What's the work week? When do you arrive? And when do you leave on a daily basis? And now I'm setting some expectations. We start at 7:30. You have until 7:30, the house is yours. At 7:30 we'll come in, but I want you to know that we'll be gone by 4. So at 3:30 we're going to start to stack materials, wrap up cords, broom clean. The house will be yours after 4 unless we agree otherwise. We won't work weekends unless there's an agreement to do otherwise. So I want to create a very clear work week, start time, quitting time. If we work on weekends, are there restrictions? Access, security code, keys, no smoking. Is it appropriate on site to put up a job sign, to pass out business cards? All right, I want the homeowner to know if people come up and talk to us, do you mind if we give them a business card? Again, completely transparent. Some HOAs don't want homeowner job signs, and they'll tell you, they'll know. In this case, a staff meeting, if you have a weekly or bi-weekly staff meeting, they need to know that every other Thursday at 7:30, the superintendent won't show up until 9 or 9:30. So they'll be at that staff meeting. Location, where do we put the dumpster? Tool storage, porta-john, don't need job phone anymore. Parking, all right? As we start working, there could be 4, 5, 6 trucks at a time. Are there any parking restrictions that we should be aware of? If there's any homeowners with any kind of handicap, any liability, let me know. I certainly don't want to create an issue. Dust protection. What are we going to do for protection measures? Here's what we're doing for the dust, floor, breakables, furniture, special finishes, which work areas need to be cleaned and when. Landscaping protection. If we're doing an addition on the back of the house, are we going to create about an 8-foot path from the front of the house to the back? As both the backhoe and materials go back and forth? Are there any bushes, anything that can be moved? Is there some way to lessen the impact of the project? Now, in most cases there isn't, but if I ask, does that make a difference? Is there anything I should be aware of? Can we move anything? I want you to understand when we start this project, there's going to be an 8-foot path that's going to be there for the next 3 months, 4 months, until we're done. And when we're over, we can reseed, but I want you to understand that's our access. Sign protection. Sign location. Rules for children. All right? Where are the location of children during working hours? And it sounds silly, but saying once work starts, it's a dangerous work site. So as kids come home from school, are we clear that your kids won't be coming in at 2 or 2:30 to see what's going on? Can you instruct them that we're not in a position to keep an eye on them or to protect them? And then you see below that is rules for pets. And I bring that up for the simple reason, who has spent time chasing a dog or a cat that got out during a project? And I was doing something like this, and if you've heard this before, bear with me, but I was doing one of these programs, and a guy kind of sheepishly raised his hand, and he said, I just ran over the family dog. It was the summer. It was out east. The dog had gone under the car to get out of the shade. He didn't know it. He backed out over it. And I said, what happened? He just said, I knew it was an accident, called the owner. He gave me the veterinary's name and number, took the dog to the vet. They worked on him, but the dog died about a week later. I said, so how are things? He said, the homeowner saw it was an accident. We tried being very proactive. But he said, I ended up with a $3,000 veterinary bill. And he said, that was part of my profit. Because he couldn't turn around and then say, here's your vet bill. So it's just, where are animals and pets going to be? It's not our responsibility.
What if the pet surge? I had a client who's called 55 times before I finally gave up and left. It's not just that way. It's also, some of them are dangerous to us.
Yes.
How do you deal with that? I couldn't command, how do you deal with that?
Job site requirements.
Okay.
Here's what has to happen. Here's what we require. This must take place for us to have a safe, efficient workplace.
Okay.
It must, that's part of our requirement. That's job procedures. That could be on here actually, Maria. Parking restrictions, special cleanup, designated eating and smoking area. You want to be respectful of the homeowner's property. So during, lunch, during breaks, is there an appropriate place? We're not going to do this in your house. So is there a place that we can agree on? When's the weekly homeowner meeting going to take place? What are the change order procedures? This is termite treatment, security system, driveway release. That's a subtle one, but the point is, if you're pouring concrete and pouring out and driving over a 40-year-old driveway, what's going to happen to that 40-year-old driveway that was poured with no? Right.
It's going to be a change order.
It's if you don't tell them ahead of time, it's going to be, you broke my driveway. Well, that and the release is basically saying you got an older home. When the truck pulls in, there's a high probability it's going to break because of the weight of these cars. So I want you to know that I need a driveway release, because if it cracks, it can't be my responsibility. I've got no other access. So informed, and then if it could be a change order.
Although actually, it does happen. I've had it happen where we just can't do the driveway. Because the driveway's actually not in bad shape, but we will ruin it.
Yes. So you got to find another access.
Another way to do it.
Okay. But that's part of that discussion, which is, what is my access? Miscellaneous notes. And once again, do you see they sign it? So at the end of that homeowner meeting, now you've set up some really clear ground rules. What's happening? When do we start? How do we address this? So basically what I've tried to do here is, how do we get the homeowner so they're following our recommendations, and we guide them through the process. Homeowner notebook, weekly meetings, weekly meeting notes. I put that together. I set up some coordination. We first start meeting with trade contractors, our key team, and agree on what are our job site expectations, what happens when you show up. Part of that coordination then is doing the trade day meeting, getting subs there to meet the homeowners so there's a sense of familiarity and understanding. Go through the pre-construction ground rules, like you just said, it's adding the oil to the process, and support all this. And I can't emphasize enough the value of that weekly homeowner meeting. I've had people say to me in the past, why do we need to do this? We've had all these meetings up front. And I just said, you'll understand things will come up, so I just want to make sure you know there's a formal time when we'll meet. After the job got started, I had people say, now we get it. There are moving parts. Who said the schedule really is just a best guess? So once you begin doing this, they begin to appreciate that weekly homeowner meeting, and fundamentally it's a pressure relief valve. Resentments do not build up, because on a weekly basis you're finding out what they are and you're addressing it. Yeah.
What do you do if there's a client that wants to have a meeting every other 10 minutes?
Fair question. So we did a job for an attorney. I said at the weekly homeowner meeting, and every evening when my lead carpenter was coming back to the office, he was spending an hour or two every afternoon talking with the lawyer. And I said, tell him that that's what the weekly homeowner meeting. He said that, and then the next day he met with him for another hour. And I said, what did he say? And the client's comment, and I kid you not, he said, no, if I want to meet with you, that's what I'm paying for. So back in that weekly, that job site recommendations, on mine, we added another line, which is the weekly homeowner meeting is a formal meeting to meet with you. If you want to meet outside of that time, you can talk with the superintendent between 7:30 and 7:45, and between 3:45 and 4. We've given you a schedule. This is how this works. Does that make sense? So I gave them guidance. After that lawyer did that, I said I wasn't clear enough. I had to give them guidelines, because that's the only way we can meet your schedule. So that goes back to job site agreements, which is they either follow your procedures. And if they don't want to follow your procedures, when do you want to know?
In the very beginning, please God.
There you go.
Okay.
I also think that when clients attempt to change the time of the weekly progress meeting is the first red flag. They're trying to get control back. They're trying to get the reins of the project.
But if you agree to it on that
That's all I'm
pre-construction
saying,
meeting,
you have to bring it back.
yes.
You can change it, but
We're going to get into this a little bit tomorrow, and we were talking earlier that we've been trained to say yes. We provide service. If somebody says, I got a really difficult roof structure, can you help me? Your answer is?
Maybe.
Or yes. Just bear with me.
Yes.
Yes, I can. The bigger the challenge, the better.
I can do anything.
It honestly took me 15 years to learn how to say no. To basically start saying, wait a minute, I've done this too long. All right, here are the procedures. I know if they follow my procedures, the job runs better. They work with my subcontractors and suppliers. This is how we do this. If somebody doesn't want my procedures, they may not be a good client.
All right, but I want to just, and I know you're trying to accomplish this in a certain amount of time. You've referenced these dichotomies that need to be united. If the client himself is split with, I need you, want you, and I'm paying you, but I also want to be, in full charge of delivery, and they can't settle the.
Imagine that conversation taking place with their family doctor. Are they in charge of what happens with their family doctor?
No.
Are they in
They
charge?
want it both ways?
Guess what? You fire them.
Okay.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
I'm being serious.
I just wish I'd met you a year ago.
Which is, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is why we're effective.
Yeah.
These are the procedures we've learned. Hence,
Yeah.
if you don't want to follow our procedures, it's not a good fit.
Okay.
Are there any other, yeah, please, Mike?
another solution that I've used for that, for the client who wants all your time,
Yeah.
is we make all sort of in-client communication is an allowance. I build a certain amount of time into the job, beyond that,
It's billable.
Oh, we bill it.
Yeah,
And
that makes
it's
sense.
cheap. It's expensive, but if you want to keep talking, we keep talking.
And that would be the other exception, which is if you want to meet every other day, then those additional meetings will be $125 an hour. Yeah.
Which has not really worked for me, but usually stops them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, again, I'm on the other side of the fence, I'm a homeowner.
Okay.
Now, obviously, not everybody, every contractor in the world has attended your seminar and doesn't know how you like to do things, and they obviously have their own way. Do you have any suggestions for homeowners of how to get them to not say no to some of the things you presented today?
part of this is, if you look at that homeowner notebook, that documented paper trail, I'm doing all that during the sales process. This is what we do, this is how we do it. We might be more, this is why. You're laying out your procedures. So they're making, that's part of their buying decision. So you're discovering that before you ever sign the contract.
Right.
So you're educating them to the process. Here's our process, this is what we do.
So I don't get to educate the contractor about what I wanna do.
Well, that'll all come out the weekly homeowner meetings. It'll come out during the sales process. If you have certain expectations, let me understand those expectations. I can either meet them or I can't,
Okay.
okay? So I know it's 2 o'clock.
Up front,
Oh, yeah,
up front, get the. try
it's
to-
all up front.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you.
We'll be doing one tomorrow morning on managing the emotional homeowner. We'll function more
I'll
on
be
that.
there, I'll be very emotional.
That's fair. Thank you, everybody, for